I am an outraged fan of 3 franchises, established and beloved by many until recent times. My solution is to brainstorm a crossover that brings all 3 together in an effort to amend the damage done. Let's get right into it, shall we? I'm talking about a crossover between Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Star Wars called Dr. Trek Wars. Now, while this will probably just remain in this video, probably will never go past this, never anything other than speculation, fan fiction, I do look to the fact that this has been done to a point with Assimilation Squared from Star Trek The Next Generation crossover with Doctor Who in a graphic novel form. I think this could go beyond that to a major motion picture, but enough of that, because, of course, they're never going to hire me for that. So, let me get right into this idea here and how it can solve the damage done, how it can resist that damage done. Yet another reason why this could never be made, because right now, the people who control Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Star Wars want it to be what they're doing now. They want it to be part of this PC woke machine. Anyway, let's just get down to the details here. I think the best place to start is with the Doctor. And I think the Doctor should be played by David Tennant, because 1, he is one of the most iconic Doctors of the modern era. And 2, there are special places within his final season, his final series of specials before he regenerates, that his story could fit in very easily compared to Matt Smith's Doctor or Capaldi or even the modern Doctor, which I don't think anyone would want to see, and I don't think she would even want to play. Anyway, move on from there. We've got our Doctor. And he, of course, is in the TARDIS just cruising around time and space. When there's a disturbance, there's an anomaly. He's sucked through that and into a different dimension. And yes, this has happened before. TARDIS doesn't like it. There's always lots of issues. But it allows us to go into a different universe, mainly the Star Trek universe. And sitting in the captain's chair is none other than the J.J. Abrams crew. You've got Chris Pine, you've got the whole cast there, from the new Star Trek on the new bridge. And of course, the Doctor steps in. First line he utters is very iconic. You've redecorated. I don't like it. Because, of course, he has seen the previous Enterprise in the 4th Doctor, as we've seen in this crossover graphic novel. But we can go further from that, because he can notice certain things that are different. He can notice certain things that are wrong. He can look and see that Spock and Uhura are holding hands, and it's like, oh, that's messed up. Or he could make a comment of, I knew it all along. I mean, he could make several remarks there that would just be very humorous for people who have watched these 3 movies. And of course, there can be statements made about what else gone on. I think it would also be really cool to see Lieutenant Eric's from the animated series there in Chekhov's chair, that there could be some remark that Chekhov had died, because, of course, the actor from the newer Star Trek movies has passed away, but they could make some remark to that, and we could get to see Lieutenant Eric's in a live-action form, although he'd probably be CG, or at least a highly prosthetic actor, but I think CG would be the best route for that particular character who has 3 arms and 3 legs, and if you don't know that, then you probably are not even watching this at all. But anyway, there can be a remark made that he has to go and solve a problem. When the anomaly swallows up the Enterprise with the TARDIS aboard, the anomaly can swallow them up and spit them out in yet another dimension. And yes, of course, that would be the Star Wars dimension, the Star Wars universe. Now, the time period could be a little bit off here. We really don't know what it is, but let's say the Doctor steps into the TARDIS with, I don't know, Kirk, Spock, and Bones, just because that's going to be a fun scene. But he steps into the TARDIS, he's able to track it down. There's an event about, what would you say, about 40 years in the future there, that they somehow emerge at a time period between episodes 3 and 4, but at that point, the Emperor Palpatine is crafting certain mechanisms that will cause the events for the sequel trilogy to happen, so they jump over to the end of Rise of Skywalker, and they find out what's gone on. The Doctor, although he's not really familiar with this timeline in this universe, he does realize that something is not right, but there is an anomaly. There is someone who is sensitive, not to the Force, but to the change in the timeline, that things just aren't quite right. And so he tracks that individual down, and whoa, it's Finn. Finn is the anomaly. Finn knows that something's wrong, and we see some of these glimpses that could lead us to believe this, especially in Rise of Skywalker, where we think, oh, he's Force sensitive, he's going to use the Force, he's going to wield a lightsaber, and then they just ignore all that and make him the blandest character possible. But no, we bring Finn in, we make Finn sort of a temporary companion to the Doctor, because the Doctor needs him to return with them to the time period between episodes 3 and 4 to go in and restore the timeline to what it should be. And so in that sense, we also have that. We could say, okay, well, we'll have a few other fun elements. We could have R2-D2 come with him. We could maybe have a few porgs stow away on a shuttlecraft, or they get beamed aboard. I think it would be a fun little short to have a porg and a triple together, but that's just bordering on fan service. But anyway, we get back to the Enterprise or TARDIS, whichever one. TARDIS is on the Enterprise, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, we got Finn on board, and then the Doctor further realizes that they need the captain. They need an experienced captain. And what Chris Pine's Captain Kirk has experienced isn't good enough. So he goes into the TARDIS, he tracks it down, and realizes that in the original timeline, because we can track that this offshoot timeline that the new Enterprise crew comes in because of Spock's events and the events on Romulus and Remus. So he gets in there, he can go back to a previous timeline, mainly the events at the end of Generations, where Picard and Kirk have that final battle and Kirk dies. Well, we have the Doctor beam him onto the TARDIS, and using his Time Lord knowledge is able to find that he's not completely dead, he's only mostly dead, and he can revive him. In the process, he is also artificially aged Captain Kirk because of the time displacement. And if you think I'm crazy on that, they've done that before when they've brought in older Doctors onto the TARDIS to interact with the new Doctors, and they explain their age away of, well, we had to bring them up to our time, and doing so artificially aged them. So yes, we bring William Shatner back to Star Trek for an epic crossover. And of course he's on there, he looks around and is like, this is not my Enterprise, what have you done with my ship? And he looks at Kirk and is like, oh, dang, did I really have that much hair? I'm just some fun comment like that would be great. But we've got him envying the younger Kirk, but at the same time, he is highly critical of him because he's done completely stupid things. And of course, we could also have him make some remark about Spock and Uhura that would just be another laugh. But moving on through the plot here. They have to figure out what's going on, what the problem is, how Finn is the one that is going to resolve the matter. And at the same time, we've also got events going on in the Star Wars universe. It's between episodes 3 and 4, so we've got about a 20, 25, 30-year gap there between that, depending on how old you want to say that Luke and Leia are by the beginning of New Hope. And I know that we've got all these theories of time displacement through the various planets and how they can age at different rates, and I know. But anyway, let's just say that it's about 10 years after episode 3, and that the battle Death Star, the battle station of the Death Star, is just about complete. And I know Luke and Leia are only about 10 here, so there's a problem because they can't go and blow up the Death Star when they're 10 years old. Listen to me. Palpatine had these plans at least from Episode 2. It's not going to take him 25, 30 years to construct this Death Star when he has another Death Star created on Endor, orbiting Endor, just a couple years after the events of Episode 4. So they've almost got it completed in 10 years' time, which is a little bit slow, but it's a feat because he's had to create the Empire too. So, and we don't know how much time exactly, but we've seen the construction of the Death Star at the end of Episode 3. So, anyway, 10 years after. We see the Death Star being constructed. It's nearly complete, and they're like, oh, well, we've got to stop this. And of course, Finn can explain what happened in the future, but the Doctor's like, I'm going to blow it up. I'm going to stop it anyway. So they move forward with their plans to stop the Death Star, thinking that that might be what causes the change in the timeline. So as they're going through the motions of infiltrating the Death Star, stopping it, they're actually approached by a Jedi who survived Order 66, actually survived the Battle of Palpatine. Yes, I'm talking about none other than Mace Windu. And they realize that they can't get aboard the Death Star. It's too heavily guarded. They can't get in there. So they have to go and find a way to steal an Imperial shuttle so they can sneak aboard, some sort of quest that they have to go on to get on the Death Star. Although I suppose you could say that they could beam in, but there's shields, or the TARDIS could go through there. Anyway, there is some gaps here that would have to be filled in. But again, this is just speculation. This is just a fan theory. Nothing more. Needless to say, the Empire gets wind of this ship, which is more powerful than anything they've really encountered, faster than a lot of the ships that they have encountered. So, they're looking to either get the technology, destroy it, or both. And so, what does Darth Vader do? Darth Vader does what he always does, and I'm citing Episode 5 here. He hires bounty hunters, and none other than Boba Fett is the most interested. Not just because he's Boba Fett and he's the coolest, but he also has realized that Mace Windu is with them, and he has this vendetta with Mace Windu for killing his father. This is also why we get into this. Mace Windu will have to die. He will have to die by disintegration. The Empire, Darth Vader particularly, wants Mace brought to him alive, and then Boba Fett disintegrates him, thus making sense of the line, no disintegrations, in Episode 5. We have the times there where they have to battle Boba Fett. Mace Windu can get killed. Mace Windu might survive till close to the end of the picture, but it's all fun there. We could have other bounty hunters show up. We could show Aurora Singh for the first time in a live-action film, and that's more than just a cameo in Episode 1. We could have Dirge show back up, and there'd be some remark of, "Weren't you thrown into a sun?" and him just laugh. There's just a bunch of fun things that we could do with the bounty hunters fighting this crew aboard the Enterprise. And then there could also be some cool lightsaber battles between Mace Windu and some others. Would it be that Mace Windu is Finn's father? I don't know. Don't really care. Does every main character in the Star Wars sequel trilogy have to have a personal connection to, like, a descendant of Luke, a descendant of Leia, a descendant of... No, they don't. They can be a completely new character. Hey, for all I care, Finn could be Qui-Gon Jinn's son that no one knew about, or Qui-Gon Jinn's grandson that no one knew about. That would be a fun twist, but I also don't think that would be a good idea. But let's move on. We've got these events, and through it all, they get aboard the Death Star, and what does the Doctor decide to do? Well, he decides to reverse the polarity of the neutron flow, causing a critical systems failure. They've then solved the problem. They've taken care of the Palpatine clone. They've made it to where the sequel trilogy doesn't happen. They've also found a way through all this that when they go back, the old Captain Kirk William Shatner disappears, and Captain Kirk's father somehow survives because they also can involve the events at the beginning of the first Abrams Star Trek picture, Star Trek number 11, whatever. They can involve those events to where it also reverses the alternate timeline for Star Trek, and then you've got David Tennant alone going through. Now that doesn't solve his issues right yet, but I think that does resolve the Star Wars issues, and I can talk more about the Star Trek later on, but I think that really resolves the Star Wars issues through that, because it also still keeps Rogue One intact, because you've got 10 years, the polarity of the neutron flow has been reversed, and in so doing, that causes a critical systems failure aboard the Death Star. They have to halt their process, and they have to go back to the designers and say, hey, we're having some problems. Oh, you've got a daughter, she's like 7? Okay, well, we need you to come back with us, and I'm going to kill anyone who gets in our way. Now, that is a great way to start.